The year is 1192. Under the burning sun of the Holy Land, two legendary commanders who can change the direction of world history are facing each other. We are at the most critical moment of the Third Crusade, and King Richard, the Lionheart of England, is waiting with his army only a few miles away from the holy city of Jerusalem. In real history, Richard stops here, studies his maps, calculates the logistical risks, the lack of water, and the exhaustion of his army, makes that difficult decision that goes down in history, and pulls back. But today, we are changing this scenario completely. Richard does not retreat. He listens to the pressure from the Templar Knights in his army, puts his military genius and all of his resources on the table, and whispers the order that will completely change the flow of history. Forward. Our target is Jerusalem. Camps are set up, and siege preparations begin. Saladin receives this news inside his headquarters behind the walls. There is not even the smallest sign of panic on his face, because he knows how dangerous Richard the Lionheart is as a commander. But he also sees that Richard's army is much weaker in numbers in front of Jerusalem. The balance of power and equipment between the two armies is completely different. Under Richard's command, there is a highly disciplined and elite force of about 15,000 men, heavy armored knights, Templar and Hospitaller knights covered in steel from head to toe. Professional Italian crossbowmen, siege engineers, and sailors form the core of this army. The chainmail on the soldiers, the large kite shields they carry, and their long spears turn them into a deadly force in close combat. On the other side, Saladin has a massive army of 25,000 men waiting inside and around Jerusalem. This army is made up of mobile horse archers adapted to the desert, an experienced city garrison, spear infantry, and elite guards. The clear truth is this: Richard's army is much stronger in man-to-man combat and in a straight battle. But this battle is not being fought on a flat plain. This is a city siege. And while the army carrying out the siege is already at a disadvantage, Saladin also has 10,000 more warriors. As a true tactical genius, Saladin starts the war with the advantage already on his side. He turns all the land around Jerusalem into a complete nightmare. As the Crusader army gets closer to the city, it cannot find even a single tree in the middle of the desert. Saladin has already ordered every useful tree across miles of land to be cut down, so no siege tower or catapult can be built. And he does not stop there, so the Crusaders will collapse from thirst. He either completely blocks off all the water wells in the region or makes them unusable. There is an army forced to move under the burning sun, across land with no water and no shade. Saladin also uses his numerical advantage by constantly sending out his horse archers on patrol. These light and fast horse archers completely cut Richard's supply lines and allow no help to arrive from behind. The top of Jerusalem's walls is also filled with thousands of experienced archers. Richard the Lionheart is fully aware of this deadly situation. By normal military logic, moving forward under these conditions means suicide. But he is not an ordinary king. To break Saladin's strategy of wearing them down and starving them out, he decides to leave behind everything that slows the army down. Massive supply wagons, tons of unnecessary materials carried for siege preparations, and thousands of civilian supporters following the camp are left behind in a single night. Richard gives his soldiers almost no time to rest, and without stopping day or night, he moves toward Jerusalem. The goal here is to reach the city walls before Saladin can completely destroy every well and dry out every nearby resource. The Crusader soldiers move forward under the burning desert sun, their tongues stuck to the roofs of their mouths from thirst, but they keep marching with high discipline. Ayyubid scouts struggle to believe that an army in such heavy armor can move at this kind of speed. Richard does not allow Saladin to use time in his favor, and in a much shorter time than expected, he brings his army to the walls of Jerusalem and sets up camp. Richard does not have ladders to storm the city, catapults to break the walls, or even a single siege tower to carry his soldiers upward. Saladin expects Richard to step back in the face of this desperation or surrender from starvation. Richard the Lionheart makes that incredible and radical decision that will go down in military history in golden letters. He gives the order for the massive royal warships from England and Italy, waiting at anchor in the port of Jaffa, to be completely dismantled. Hundreds of ship carpenters at the port begin taking apart the old oak timbers, massive masts, and thick deck planks that form the backbone of the fleet, piece by piece. Richard organizes hundreds of camels and pack animals in the region to move these enormous pieces of wood through the desert. Before the Crusader army trapped in the middle of the desert becomes an open target for Saladin's raids, it manages to build a protected siege line. As the sound of hammers rising from the camp breaks the silence of the desert, Richard has the enormous siege towers prepared, the ones that will break Jerusalem's walls. The siege process that should take weeks is handled in only a few days thanks to Richard. As soon as Saladin hears about this insane logistical move, he orders his horse archers to destroy the convoys. Ayyubid cavalry launches sudden raids on the lines carrying timber and tries to break the chain, but Richard has already predicted this. On the outside, he builds an unbreakable wall with heavy armored infantry, spears, and large shields, while Italian crossbowmen find a safe firing zone right behind this wall. Because crossbows have more range than arrows, Saladin's horse archers become useless. The moment the siege towers are complete, Richard wastes no time and gives the order for a full assault. Saladin plays his biggest card to stop these towers from reaching the walls, and he allows thousands of elite archers lined up on the walls to fire freely. At the same time, the mobile horse archers outside the walls begin a merciless rain of arrows toward the paths where the towers are moving. As thousands of arrows fly through the air, the sky almost turns completely dark, and the Crusader infantry pulling the towers with ropes falls to the ground one by one. At this exact moment of crisis, Richard sends in the Italian crossbowmen. The crossbowmen plant their man-sized wooden shields into the ground, creating a full protective barrier against the storm of arrows coming from the walls. The steel bow mechanisms of the crossbows are drawn, the triggers are pulled, and they hit the Ayyubid archers on the walls behind the narrow openings where they are hiding. As the defenders who are hit fall from the walls, this intense fire superiority provided by Richard forces Saladin's archers to pull back from the tops of the walls. The moment the pressure on the walls drops, the Crusader infantry pushes the towers forward with one last effort, and the massive wooden structures lock onto the walls of Jerusalem with a heavy impact. The enormous wooden ramps of the siege towers crash down onto the walls with a huge noise, and direct face-to-face combat begins between the two armies. Richard sends the elite Templar Knights, covered from head to toe in steel plates, to the front in order to use the armor and power advantage in the most ruthless way possible. The knights crash onto the walls like walking iron fortresses. Inside the narrow, twisting, and confusing streets of Jerusalem, a terrifying close-quarters battle begins. Saladin's lightly armored and flexible infantry completely loses its ability to maneuver in these tight spaces. With no room to escape or circle around, the Ayyubid soldiers become ineffective against the steel armor of the Templar Knights. Light sword strikes bounce off the knights' armor with sparks, while the Crusaders' heavy battle axes and two-handed longswords begin cutting through the defense lines street by street. At the main gate, the gate is finally broken with a battering ram, and the army begins entering the city completely. Richard the Lionheart is personally at the very front line, his shield set aside, moving forward with his enormous sword and breaking the lines apart. When Saladin sees Richard's unstoppable pressure, he sends forward his own personal guards, the elite Mamluk units with yellow cloaks. The Mamluks and the knights crash into each other in the middle of the narrow streets, and the battle turns into a brutal close-quarters clash. But in tight spaces, the raw physical strength of the knights and the quality of their heavy steel win out. Richard and his men advance house by house, street by street, pushing the Ayyubid guards toward the center of the city. After hours of savage fighting and the sound of clashing steel, the Crusader banner is planted right in the middle of Jerusalem with a thunderous roar. Richard achieves what is called impossible, defeating all of Saladin's genius and the logistical traps he created with his own military intelligence, and he captures Jerusalem. Saladin, with an extremely calm decision, withdraws from the battle and leaves the city in order to avoid more casualties and protect the main core of his army. Richard lets out cries of victory, but this massive tactical miracle is actually hiding a very painful and deadly truth. Richard wins this victory alone, and he pays a huge price for it. More than half of the elite knights die in the streets of Jerusalem, and the ones who remain are so exhausted they can barely even lift their swords. Richard takes the holy city, but behind the ruined walls, in the middle of the desert, he is left completely alone with only a handful of wounded soldiers. Saladin, on the other hand, is not alone like a leader who has completely lost the war while he retreats. Under his banner, Damascus, Cairo, Baghdad, and Mosul, some of the greatest and richest military centers of the era, send help to him. Richard pulls off a tactical miracle and wins one battle, but how long can he hold this ruined city? Because this time, Saladin is returning to besiege Jerusalem again with an even more massive fresh army, filled with the desire for revenge. And this time, the city already has damaged walls that have not yet been repaired. So what do you think? After this point, could Richard the Lionheart stop Saladin's massive counterattack? Or is this exactly why he never besieged Jerusalem in real history? For more alternative history videos like this, you can click the playlist on the screen. Do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you can instantly know when new videos come out. See you in the next video.